you the business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Sawyer Health Solutions. Protecting what's important to you is what's important to us. Get your free health insurance quote at SawyerHealthSolutions.com. By selling the tools, not the dream, Beate Chelette focuses on the inspirational and motivational message of you are enough, and if I can, you can. Failing your way to success and finding your ego rhythm are a few methods she uses to help you gain the confidence to find the gifts that you have to offer. After the show, learn more at www.beatechelette.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Beate Chelette. One of the things I noticed on your profile was that I don't sell the dream, I sell the tools. And I absolutely love that phrase. I love that quote. Tell me what that means for you.
Well, so what it means for me, Craig, is I am so over people telling you all the things that you need to do, and then they don't tell you how to do it.
Right.
And so my whole purpose, if you so want to, is built around this one idea. If you just want to live the dream and you want to do the rah-rah, go somewhere else. If you want to know how to do it, you come here because I provide the tools. Because I think that a lot of times we forget in the entrepreneur space that, yeah, it's great to have the vision. It's great to get clear on the why. It's great to do all of it, but then you still need to know what you need to do. And so that's really my specialty, because I can't help myself but think in systems.
Yeah, and I love that you say that. And I love that phrase, because you're right. Every time I want to get advice on something, especially in sales, I'm in sales and sales is full of, the same cliches and things like that. And they always tell you, oh, well, you just got to get out in front of people. And, the more people you talk to, the more opportunities you'll have to tell them how you can help them. But they don't really tell you how to get in front of those people. So those are the types of things that most people are looking for. And everything is so generic when we talk about it that nobody really gives you specifics on how you're supposed to do those types of things.
I think you're touching on something that a lot of the internet marketers have really ruined for everyone, which is that trite language that is based up on neuroscience, which is persuasion strategies that get people in the FOMO and the fear of missing out, and in the mindset of all the things that you need to do, and then you constantly driven by another thing you need to do and another thing that you need to do. I heard something really good yesterday, Craig. I was listening to a mindset trainer as I was walking, and he said that when you follow the science of getting rich, there is, in the prelude to the book, in the introduction, there is a line that says, when you decide to do this, you only do this. You don't do anything else. You don't follow another master, because once you decide that you're going to use one strategy to get somewhere, you kind of have to follow that strategy until it gets you there before you do something else. And so people do it a little bit, and then they fall off because they don't get the results quickly enough. Or they listen to someone who's not done it, but who teaches it, but they don't really know how to do it because they don't have a track record. And then it doesn't work. And then they do something else. So they're chasing another program, another idea, another strategy every 5 minutes. And as a result of it, they keep looping. And so that's really, I think, one of the things I liked about what you talk about is the value and getting clear on, what is the value that you bring and what are you giving to your audience? And that is at the key and the core of everything. It's not about what you're getting. It's about what you're providing and where are the people that want that.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you have information, you have knowledge, it doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do anybody else any good if you're not sharing it with somebody else.
Yes. And that, that's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of times there's two sides of this. So number one, there are people that think that just knowing the information qualifies them for sharing the information. That's the regurgitated stuff that, and forgive me if I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So if I see another woman in an oversized sweater with a glass of Chardonnay sitting in a fancy kitchen telling me that in 2 hours a week, I can make an extra $10,000 and I can live my dream, I am going to vomit.
But you don't believe that?
It's because someone said that before, and then 10,000 took that course, and now they're all copying that exact same messaging. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, and this is the second part of it, sharing the knowledge. Entrepreneurship is about failing your way to your success. And I always say there's a million ways to be successful. You only need to find one, which is your own. That's what you share.
And you said that the failing your way to success, and that was actually my next question. I know that's your thing. So go into that.
So it's really simple. So a lot of times what people do, especially entrepreneurs, is that when you make a mistake, and it could be you have a wrong partner, you put money in a venture that didn't pan out, you didn't read the contract, you got sued, you got screwed. There's 50 million things that can go wrong. And so you have a choice. You can either sit on the sidewalk with your boohoo crew and say, life is so unfair and mean, and you can't believe why this is happening to you. And you take this as evidence that you are a failure, and you go home. Or you can look at it and have curiosity and say, wow, that was a pretty tough lesson for me to learn. Man, that really hurt. Wow, that was a big one. Glad I got that out of my way. And you don't have it happen to you, but you have it have it happen for you, and you take it as an opportunity. I always compare it to like a road sign, right? So when you come to an intersection, and so now you already know that on one road it says, don't go here. And so you go, oh, great. Now I only have two ways, either left or right. This is no longer an option. And add this, instead of looking at it as a failure, but look at it as an opportunity to find the right path. So failing fast is an excellent skill set.
I love that. And I like your analogy with the roads, because you're right. I mean, you just basically figured out one way not to do it, right? I mean, it's a process of elimination. You get all those wrong ways out of the way. That only leaves one thing, and that's the right way. I like that analogy.
Yeah, and it's not like you would get out of the car and throw yourself on the ground and throw a temper tantrum because because you can't go. All you would do is like, not that way. Or how many times have you gone hiking and you took a wrong turn and you still sort of made it there? It was just a different way. So the judgment is the problem, not the mistake.
And there's so many people that don't leap, right? Because it's fear. I mean, it really is the biggest reason why people don't do a lot of the things they want to do. And I'm guilty of that as well. I think, we all are to a certain extent, but then you have the risk takers, right? The people who have that personality trait. Entrepreneurs are one of them. People who jump out of airplanes, those crazy nuts. But, those are the types of people that are like, I'm not going to say no. I want to say yes to everything. But when it comes to the business industry, anything, in entrepreneurship or in business, you have to leap. You have to, take that leap of faith. And I always say that if you're not failing, you're not trying, because you're never going to get something right the first try. I mean, that's a very rare occasion. So you have to fail if you're actually going to get anywhere. So you can't be scared of it. Otherwise, you're just kind of hanging out. You're plateauing.
Yes, and you touching on a really important point that I think is often misunderstood. So so I compare it like this. So when we're born, so there's a USB port that's plugged in that starts running a program. The program is what our parents believe, our environment teaches us, what school teaches us. That's the program that runs. And that program says, you have to be afraid of everything. You need to go find a job. You need to get a good job. Benefits are great. If you drive a nice car, life is good. If you can go on a 2-week vacation, you got it made, right? So that's the overall agenda of the original programming. And then you become an entrepreneur and somebody gives you a different USB port. And now you have to plug that in on a different side. And now this program starts to run. But this program is the dominant operating system. So this program needs to be constantly updated to eventually override the old programming. And that is the skill set that you have learned only gets you from here to here. But if you're here and you want to get from there, you don't have the skill set yet because your operational system it's not programmed. You can't know. So that's why you need to really be conscious and aware of, if you want to do something different than your parents did, you want to do something different than your friends do, you need to surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do so that your operational system, your USB port, that program keeps getting fed again and again and again.
Yeah, you are your environment. You are what you're around. So if you surround yourself with the people that you want to be, it's easier to become that person. Do you think that people who are those risk takers or those entrepreneurs, those types, that type of person, do you think you're born into that, or is that something that you can train yourself how to be?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody has ever asked me that. So let me think about that for a second. I believe that there definitely are risk takers. I think that for the most part, men are probably bigger risk takers than women in general. Is it something that you can learn? 100%. But it requires you to do the mindset work. And you talk about this, Greg, all the time, how important the mindset work is. And I'm with you on that 100%, because if you can't imagine it, if you can think it, then there's nobody out there to convince you of the opposite. So for you to be a risk taker, there's a lot of self-talk that's involved in that.
Right. And if you're not naturally that way, you have to, just like anything else, you got to train yourself how to do that. And it's just going to take more work for the people who don't have those natural, inhibitions to do the dangerous things, to take those leaps. It's just going to take more work, more time for them.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to throw myself out of an airplane anytime soon.
I'm with you.
But what I have learned is that you think that the risks that you're being asked to take right now are big risks. Just wait until the numbers get bigger, because your $25,000 today is $250,000 tomorrow. It's $2.5 million next year. It's $25 million, when you get in these kinds of different scenarios. So it's all relative. It's just that the zeros are getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you grow further in your career. So if you can't make a decision, I always compare that, Greg, so I was talking to a woman, and we were going through an uncovery session, and she needed to learn how to talk about herself. I call this the unapologetic value proposition. I have a whole process for that, how you can talk about yourself without sounding like a jerk. And she wanted to get into the C-suite, and she had a real opportunity to do that. All she would have needed to do is invest $2,500 in this program where I would have taught her step by step how to talk about herself so she can land the job, which would have given her, $50,000 more a year on the spot. And she couldn't do it. So to me, and sometimes I really have a hard time to go and say, okay, what is it about when the numbers and the data is there and it's telling you that this is the only way for you to grow, and you cannot say yes to $2,500 that will get you a quantum leap, that means that you just made a decision in your life to not grow.
Right.
Because you cannot, if you are an entrepreneur and you run out of time, you cannot make more time available to make the money. You need to have to hire. You have to hire first. Your productivity is going to go down on the onboarding. until the curve goes up, and then you have your exponential growth. But you got to be able to stomach that. There's this data around this. So sometimes I don't understand what's so difficult about that, to understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes again, it's that leap of faith, right? I'm going to spend this $2,500. How do I know I'm going to get that out of it? How do I know that's what I'm going to get back? Am I throwing this $2,500 away? Is there something else that's a surer bet that I could invest this $2,500 in? I've been in many situations like that where, yeah, I don't care if it's $250, $2,500, $25,000, whatever. I mean, obviously, the higher you go, the harder it is to send that out there, right? Exactly. So, I think it's just that fear, because we hear about it all the time. People getting screwed over. They paid X for this and didn't get this for their money back. So you want to make sure that you're at least being smart about it. You're looking into what you're investing in. I want to go backwards a little bit, because you had touched on it a second ago about men and women, the difference between them and being risk takers. And we know that, I think it's pretty well known, pretty well documented that men's brains and women's brains do work differently in many different ways. Does that make them different in their leadership abilities as well? Because we know that, the decision-making things has changed. Women tend to be more, maternal and, what's the word I'm looking for? But, we're more emotional. Men tend to be more, on the analytical and logical side. Does that change how they lead? And does that change how people view them as leaders?
100%. So I have, this is in all my work, this is really my thought leadership piece. And so when I sold my business to Bill Gates, they asked me to come on board as a senior director of global entertainment. And now I'm in this corporate structure that I, really hadn't been in for many, many years. And I'm watching what's going on, and I see that the system really only works for white men. And I see minorities failing. I see women failing in the system. And I'm going, like, this doesn't even make any sense to me. I mean, there's such a discrepancy in the way it operates. I see women telling their bosses that they're pregnant, and it's like, it's the biggest secret that's finally being revealed. I'm going, like, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that women have babies. I've known this for a very long time. I'm having a hard time imagining people don't know this. And yet it's such an awkward thing to do. And so I looked at it and I recognized that what's different in the way men and women do business is that men have a code. I call it the men's code. And this men's code is nowhere written down, but it has some very specific rules. It's based on loyalty. It's about winning, strategy, persuasion. It's pretty narrowly focused on how to be the best. And if you think about it, men are raised in that sense from the very beginning. You got to do a team sport, got to learn how to be a team player. You got to learn how to win. You got to be able to handle a loss, but winning is really the overall objective. And then you go into business and you keep the same way. Women, on the other hand, are raised in good girls are seen, not heard. My own mother told me that men don't like women like me, and because I'm outspoken. Every report card I've ever had says talks too much. And suddenly I'm in this environment where I'm supposed to stand up for myself, set boundaries, and learn how to win and strategize and do all of that. And nobody's ever even taught me. And then I'm being told I'm emotional, and I'm not really on the emotional side. I'm very system oriented, but I'm being thrown into that. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going like, well, women do not have a code.
Of all the ways that we take care of those that we love, the most important is providing the care they need when they need it most. Sawyer Health Solutions. Go to SawyerHealthSolutions.com for a free health insurance quote.
And women don't have a code because there's only such few women leadership positions, and women are taught to take other women out. So women are busy with infighting, and they can never lead properly because they're so busy with each other. So I created the Women's Code to teach women, first of all, how to have a code amongst ourselves. And then the thought leadership idea is very, very simple. There's nothing wrong with male leadership. There's nothing wrong with winning, strategy, persuasion, logic. And then when we look at a pandemic or a crisis, what's working in a crisis? Community, empathy, collaboration. These are female-centric leadership attributes. So why can't we take this moment and say, look, the male has its place, the female has its place. Why don't we consciously couple the both and create this new business code so that instead of saying what's better or what works better, we say what's best for this particular situation, this particular project, this particular team, this particular decision.
And it shouldn't really be male attributes or female attributes, right? I mean, and I know that I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole on this show because that's a whole different topic, but you know, and it'll take a long time to correct that, right? I mean, just societal issues with how we raise boys versus how we raise girls. Should it be different for one or the other? You know, I have my opinion on it, and I'm sure you do too, and I'm sure everybody else does too. But it does create a lifelong issue, good or bad, on how men and how women handle situations in life, personal or business. And you had mentioned something that, and I wasn't planning on going down this route, but I'm glad we are. When it comes to women in the workplace, especially in leadership roles, where roles of responsibility, there does tend to be that girl eat girl feeling, and that it's very, and people will call it like, that the cat fighting or things like that. But where does that come from? Why do women want to tear each other down rather than support each other? Why does it seem like it's always like they're trying to fight each other instead of help each other?
So I did that's what I wrote my first book on, Happy Woman, Happy World. And I did a lot of data analysis and studies on that. And it really comes from that we as girls watch our mothers do it. And so when you think about it all the way back in caveman times, so men had to, from the beginning of time, be strategic. They didn't have to like each other. They just had to be okay with killing the mammal together, right? So they picked the best, the fastest, the best skinner, the best shot, the best spy, whatever. They built a team based on strength. It is in a man's DNA. In the meantime, we were in the cave. We may have gone to get the water together, but we carried our own buckets. And then our survival depended on a man. So if my man gets killed, the only way I can survive is by taking another woman's man. And if she allows me to do that, it's her fault. So this cave woman behavior survived all these years, where women believe in some archaic way that there's not enough men, not enough leadership positions, not enough to go around. So they're constantly fighting with each other. And that's why women don't advance as a group, because we're too busy with this childish stuff over here to ever claim the 50% that we should naturally have. It's really simple. It's an archaic.
Is that a biological thing, or is that something that's still subliminally, like, just taught, unconsciously taught?
Both.
So you think we're kind of wired that way? I
think we're wired that way. I think that we are taught that way. I remember my mother telling me things like, when a woman gives you yellow roses, it means she's jealous. I mean, that's just ludicrous. I mean, to imagine that somebody who's invited to your house and brings you flowers and that they're a yellow flower and it's some sort of subliminal message. I mean, that's just idiotic.
Maybe they just like yellow.
Maybe they just like yellow.
Yeah.
Maybe I like yellow. So am I not allowed to like yellow roses now because it's like giving me a certain message? But we are bombarded with these messages from media, from the movies, from articles on what's being written constantly. It's like, what are her ulterior motives? I mean, it's fueled by how the press reacts to women, or look at strong women, how they're being portrayed as feminists, as man haters, as probably alone cat ladies. You know, it's saddening, but we can't change that unless women start sticking with each other and helping each other more.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'm like, wow, this sounds like something that, we should be talking about and asking questions about. But at the same time, what you were just talking about, it's almost like we're over analyzing things. So I feel like we should be discussing the differences and how we can cope with those differences and say, okay, look, it's okay that we have these differences. We just need to change how we act or react to them. But then sometimes it just feels like maybe they're like you said, like they're over analyzing things. Like, no, maybe she just wanted to give her yellow flowers are on sale this week. It didn't mean a darn thing, so you want to discuss these things, but you don't want to over analyze them to the point that you're creating new issues by trying to solve one.
And to your point, and this is what creates cancel culture. So in my world, in the piece of this new business code, right? I don't want to change men, and I don't necessarily want to change women. I want to get the awareness to just simply say there's the perception of a female-centric leadership attribute, and there's a perception of a male-centric leadership attribute. So let's pick 5 on each side, and let's make our company lead on these 10 leadership attributes. It's a sliding scale. It's a balanced scale. So that way I can have a conversation. I can say, hey, Craig, last year you did really great on your strategy and you're winning. This year, what are you going to develop? And you're going to say, hey, I think empathy is going to be on my list this year. I'm like, great. And then we remove the label, because then it doesn't matter anymore, because then it's something that we agreed upon to be in balance. And that, I think, is a big problem we have right now with cancel culture. And that's what every business owner needs to be worried about, is you say one thing, somebody takes it out of context, calls it a microaggression, a macroaggression, a racist comment or something, you're dead.
So since we're talking about these, male and female differences, talk about the ego rhythm and what that is.
So ego rhythm is a concept I developed because I recognize that a lot of people have this desire to be perfect. And so what we do is we look at our friend, Susie, who is a world-class chef, and all her meals are organic, and she's amazing. Then we look at our friend, Alex, and Alex is buff, right? 5% body fat? And we go, man, that would sure be good to look like that. Then we look at our other friend, John, and John is just his career is just taken off. He's making money left and right. He's always traveling. Things couldn't be better. Then there's our friend, Alyssa, and Alyssa got the best relationship. My God, they've been married for 15 years. It's like they just got together. And then we go home and we say, all right, so here's the order. I have to have a body like Alex. I have to do it like her. I have to do it like her. I have to do it like her. And we have this idea that our life now has to be a perfect 10 in absolutely single area of our lives. And as a result of it, we drive ourselves crazy. So I developed ego rhythm because I recognized that when my daughter had asthma, and she had a near fatal asthma attack, so she stopped breathing in the middle of the night. And then I took her, I tried to wake her up, and we rushed to the hospital. It took us some time to figure out she had asthma. And then for the next 3 years, my whole life is consumed with figuring out what I can do to get her to not have these asthma attacks, because nothing scared me more than your child breathing in the middle of the night. And then she grew out of it. And so I'm like, wait. So I'm consumed by this. And then it just goes away. And then another thing comes. And then it's financial hardship. And then another thing comes, and it's personal tragedy. And then there's another thing that comes. And so I'm realizing that there's really this rhythm to life, which I call ego rhythm, your own rhythm. And that the key to being happy is to recognize that you can have everything, just not all at once, but when the rhythm is right for it. So if I would have known that my daughter, when she was 14, would yell at me from the top of her lungs, I bleep, hate you, I probably would have enjoyed the dependency she had on me when she was a baby a lot more, but I didn't know. And so this is really the concept where I want your audience to go, oh, lifesaver, don't have to be perfect at everything. This is where I am right now. Let me do that. There's going to be another rhythm that's going to come after that. Let me be present in the now.
That is so hard to do. It makes so much sense because life does work that way, right? You have great highs, you got great lows, you got days where everything's just kind of, hey, this is okay. Nothing spectacular is happening, but nothing bad's happening either. So it's right down the center. But it's kind of like a rubber band. Like, it gets stretched, but then it pulls back. Then it gets stretched and then it pulls back. So I like that. Now we have a name for that because, I've tried to explain that to myself and other people as well. And I didn't really have a name for it. So now I have a name for it.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, compare it to like, if your life is like a slice of bread, right? So if you've ever been to Paris or any bakery and you've gotten this fresh baguette and you want to eat the whole thing, but it would not be practical. What do? You break it off or you cut a couple slices. You have one now, you have one later, you have one in the evening, you have garlic bread, you dip it in olive oil. You can have the whole thing, just not all at once. Well, why not look at your own ego rhythm just like that? You can have it all, but you would never think about consuming it all at once. That would be really difficult.
It's very true. And, speaking of the ups and downs, most of us, and if you haven't yet and you're listening to this, it'll happen. But most of us have experienced multiple failures. I mean, like probably countless failures. Sometimes we can point out one particular one that changed the trajectory of our life in a good way forever. Do you have a failure that did that for you?
I think mine was sort of the grand finale of a decade of just really good failures. And it started with a employee that got a little bit too close to my key vendor. And then they had a plan to set up their own business which was my business without me. And that set off a whole series of events, a lawsuit. And then I lost this particular part of my business because of what they did. And then I had a production business. And then 9 months later, September 11th comes and I lost $500,000 in a day in production value. And then I was $135,000 in debt. And then I'm thinking, I'm somehow coming out of all of this. Somehow I'm going to Germany. My father has a stroke. My father doesn't have a stroke. My father has pancreatic cancer. So he dies 6 weeks later. I'm at the grave in Germany and overlooking this beautiful valley. And my phone rings and now we've been served a notice, so we're losing the house. And at that moment, so this defining moment was that I fell on my knees and I yelled at God. And I said, if you have a plan, this really would be a great time to fill me in. And I surrendered. And I said, if I go down, at least I go down in flames. It's not a match. It's an inferno. I will not drown in a puddle. It'll be the ocean. At least it's worth it. And I let it go. And after I let it go, I went back. I figured out how to move on money I didn't have. Kind of just like trying, with a bankruptcy attorney on speed dial. And then I got a letter from the White House because I had written a letter to the President of the United States to help me. And that put me in touch with the SBA, the Small Business Administration. That helped me to obtain a loan to restructure my debt, freed up my line of credit. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category. And suddenly I'm selling my business to Bill Gates. So and that's why I have such a different perspective on failure, because I think that these defining moments, the bigger your job is going to be, the tougher that last stretch of that dark tunnel is going to be. Because if you're here with a mission and a vision and to get somewhere and it's hard, congratulations, you're almost there.
All right. Yeah. And you know what? It is a defining moment. It does define who you are and how strong you are. And many times, and not all the time, because as you said, you do have the ego rhythm, right? I mean, there's the ups, the downs, and some of those downs are farther down than others. Some of those ups are farther up than others. but there's always that one that just changes everything, but it goes back up. And that's the thing that people don't realize when they're at the bottom, and you don't really know rock bottom until you've been there. And even when you've been there, you don't know that that's the lowest you could go. They could get even lower. I mean, right? We've all heard stories, and I'm like, well, dang, I got it real bad, but did you read the paper about this person? And they got it even worse. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not at the very bottom. I could go lower, so let's not go there. But then you go back up, and a lot of times, many times, when you go back up, you get higher than you were before you went down. Like, you do even better. You build better. You know more. And when you know loss, the good stuff feels so much better. When you have that negative to compare it to, you don't know the sunshine until you know the rain, kind of thing. You mentioned too, and we're getting a little low on time here, so I want to ask you this question before we go. The business that you sold to Bill Gates, tell us what that was and how that evolved and how that happened.
Yeah. So basically, as I said, I had been in photography. So my only degree is photography. I don't have a business degree, but building business systems is easy for me. Like when someone talks to me about their business, it immediately spits out a formula, a system, a process. I just can't help it. And so after this photographer and my employee, that they were in the business of architect, he was in the business of architectural photography. And I saw a need in the market to build up a library of architectural and interior photography images. And because I was a photo editor at Elle magazine in Germany, I understood that you may as well go after the A-list. It's the same amount of work. So I went after the A-listers in the industry, and I offered a service that nobody else would provide, but that a risk I was willing to take, paying for the digitization of their images. And that what that did is it brought me celebrity at home stories. And suddenly I'm getting, these celebrity home stories from Madonna, Francis Ford Coppola, Julianne Moore, and all these A-listers. And because I was a photo editor at Elle magazine, I knew how to sell these. And that made me the world leader in this particular category in like 18 months.
Wow.
And so that's what attracted this Bill Gates company, the Corbis, the stock photography piece that Bill Gates personally owned. And they couldn't grow their celebrity division. So they had been actively looking for something to buy. And so they came and asked me on whether or not I was going to tell them how I did it. And I said, like any decent woman, I will not tell you how I do it. If you want to know what I know, you need to pay for it. I mean,
darn right. Yeah.
Darn right. And then they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, I want a couple million for it. And they said, okay.
Damn, I should have made it more.
No,
yes came too fast.
I knew what my number was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what the number was.
That's awesome.
The number had to be big enough to never work again.
See, but that came from, like, that was born from the loss of, the business due to everybody, or like not everybody, but the two basically stealing your business from you. So
and
thank
that
you.
Is the most important part. If I wouldn't have been forced to let that go, I would have never done that.
Yeah.
So that's the gift. That's, I think, Craig, the message that I find is the most important to drive home with your audience. If you don't judge it, but if you have that curiosity and say, I wonder what else is coming that's so much better, that might be, it has to be taken away from you so you can replace it with something so much better.
Exactly. And you have to be willing to work, though. Like, you can't just stand back and just wait for something better to happen. You got to build it, but it does, if you've got that drive. I spoke with somebody the other day who said that, the number one trait that he felt was necessary for entrepreneurs is a short memory. You got to take those losses. And I hadn't thought about that, but you do, because if you don't have a short memory, those losses, those fears are so fresh in your mind all the time. It makes you scared to make that next step, because you're like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to go through that again. You got to forget about it. And, he was formerly in the NFL. He's a business owner now, an entrepreneur, but he played for the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL. And, my question to him was, God, when you get beat on that route, I mean, you just get beat. How do you go to that next play, man? Like, I mean, you're in front of millions of people, millions of eyes out here on TV and in the stadium. How do you get back up and go to that next play after you just got your butt beat? He's like, you just got to have a short memory, man. Like it was a play ago. It's over. Move on to the next one. So I think that is such a great thought to put into basically every day of your life, that, hey, you got to have a short memory and keep moving. Remember it. I mean, you got to remember how it felt to drive you to go forward, but don't be scared of it. Beate, that's all we've got today. I'm out of time. I wish we could talk longer.
I know, right?
But if you could tell everybody how they can find out a little bit more about you, tell them about the book, where they can find that.
I'll be happy to. Thank you, Craig.
Sure.
So if you're interested in finding out about the ego rhythm concept and reading the book, it's called Happy Woman, Happy World. You can find it on Amazon, available as an ebook, printed book, also as an audiobook. If you are a business owner and you are interested in figuring out a piece of the system, I designed something called the 5-Star Success Blueprint, which is my system on how you grow, build, and scale your business. You can go to airtightavatar.com and take a free masterclass. And that masterclass is on how to find really good clients. So I'm taking you through this in about a half hour, how to create a really airtight customer avatar so that you can find your very best clients and start seeing sales explode.
Very cool. Thanks again. I appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon. I know it's a couple hours prior to me. Right now, you're in California. I'm in Florida, but enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you for spending time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Craig.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.